What's up, everybody? This is Missy from Lansing Hoops and Learn to Hoop at Home, and today I'm going to cover another question in the How to Be a More Effective Flow Teacher series. Today we're going to go over problem students. Okay, this is a big topic. It can be charged with a lot of emotional fury, if you will. So we're going to cover what to do when there's a student in your class who's disruptive or causes it to be difficult to teach or makes it difficult for other people to learn. So one thing that I like to remember with problem students is that, generally speaking, they're not trying to be a problem. So we have all experienced a student in class who has a hard time staying on track or on focus with what everybody else is doing. Or perhaps they like to teach over you and interrupt when you're speaking to add their own suggestions on what a student might do. This is especially frustrating when they're not teaching the right concept or they're teaching it improperly. Some other things that disruptive students do are come in late, or perhaps they leave early, or they look at their cell phone in class. These are all things that take the focus off of what is supposed to be being done in class and puts it on the person who's the disruptor or the problem student. Okay, so the first thing to remember, again, is that most problem students are not trying to be a problem. Sometimes they're just not aware that their behavior is so disruptive, and you can do simple things to adjust that behavior. And this works especially well if there's more than one student who is doing something disruptive. So I had a class before where several students would check their cell phones throughout the class. So there was 5 or 6 people who were checking their cell phone 3 or 4 times within class. So that ends up being about 20 to 25 cell phone checks within a 1-hour class. So we're averaging somebody walking away every 2 minutes, which is quite distracting because when they do that, their focus is gone. They miss direction on what they're supposed to be doing, which is their own problem, but then when they come back, they distract everybody else with asking questions and trying to catch up. So something you can do there is saying, at the end of class, you could say it in the beginning of class, all right, guys, we have 1 hour to focus on us today, so I want everybody to turn your cell phones on silent, put them in your purses, put them in your shoes, and keep them out of sight. And please refrain from checking your phone during class because we really want to spend this time just focusing on us. I try to do that as a reframe to make it about those students, which it really is. So it's not like you're doing something dishonest there. It really is about them, and you want them to focus in on what they need. But it also addresses everyone in one swoop instead of having to individually go to each student. So you can do broad sweeps that way, but then sometimes there will be a student who is still not doing what you need them to do, or they're still being a disruptor in some way. So let's say you have one student who's chronically late, and every time you start class, you're 8.5 minutes into the beginning of class, everybody's already moved through warm-ups and you've already done your introduction of the technique that you're going to learn, and this person comes in and they say hello to everyone and they're whispering, so they think that they're not being that distracting, but meanwhile every single person that they walk by is looking at them instead of looking at you and paying attention. So what you can do, and this sometimes feels uncomfortable, but remember, people are there to see you and it's okay to be an authority, is you can go to that person at the end of class and ask them to arrive on time. It feels a little weird, but it's very simple. It goes something like this. At the end, after you're all done, you might say, all right guys, thanks for coming in. It's been a great week. Kelly, if you could go ahead and hang out for just a minute, I wanted to talk to you about something before you leave. Everyone else, I'll see you next week, right? You give everybody else a chance to clear out so that you're not directly talking to a student in front of everyone. And then you say to them, as they say after, hey, I noticed that you've had some trouble getting to class on time. I just wanted to remind you that we start promptly at 7, and I need you to show up on time. The reason is when you show up late, it's distracting for me and everyone else. So please do your best to show up at 7. And if this time doesn't work for you, I encourage you to choose another slot that does. And then you can offer them something else that does work into their schedule. Just this conversation with them, a one-on-one, will prompt them to reflect on their own behavior and realize that even though they don't think they're being distracting, that they are. So we've covered when everybody in the class is being distracting. We've covered when one person in the class is being distracting. So what do we do if there's someone who's a repeat offender in class that's distracting, right? So someone who maybe for whatever reason they can't focus on the technique, and so they're always off in their own world. One of my favorite things to do is to just go and stand next to that person, which sounds a little bit obtrusive at first, but I don't mean it in like a, you know, like you're hanging over them kind of way. But if there's someone who likes to talk a lot to their friends, or who likes to be off doing their, you know, palm spins and their things while you're talking, or they should be practicing something else, it can be helpful to just walk over to them, you know, and just sort of stand there, you know, like you're watching and waiting for them to show you the technique. And the reason is that will remind them that they're supposed to be doing something. If they don't get it at that point, you can just say to them, hey, why don't you show me this technique that we're working on? Let me see what you got. And then they'll show it to you. Inevitably, there's something else that you can show them, because that's the art of flow arts, is that there's always something else. So if they have it perfectly, show them a more advanced variation of that trick or something that they can add on. And if they don't, encourage them to practice some more with something specific. So perhaps they're bored with this technique, so you can have them practice reverse current or other hand, or you can add some simple variations for them so that they have a little bit more to work with. If you have any questions about these 3 tips for keeping your problem students at bay, hit me up in the comments. Otherwise, make sure you subscribe to Lansing Hoops for more tips on how to be a more effective flow teacher. See you next time.